your family. Your world will be extinguished.
Question for Kevin. Both Marvel and DC obviously have had successes at the cinema, but Marvel seems to have a very, very good strategy for a universe, not just on the big screen, but obviously TV as well. How coordinated is that, and how far ahead are you looking? I know there's talk about more TV series after S.H.I.E.L.D., more phases in the cinema. How is it effectively, one package you're looking at, and clockwork, as it were?
For the most part, it is. We're a very tight-knit group at the studio, so all of the movies are very, very coordinated. And we have them announced through the end of 2015, but are planning as far out as 2017. And sometime next year we'll announce what those films are for 16 and 17. The TV division is up and running now, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. obviously was their first series. I know they'd love to bring more things to the TV screen. I'm not sure exactly what or when that will be. And in terms of S.H.I.E.L.D., yes, they sort of cue off of what's happening in the movies and occasionally check in with us and go, would it be okay if we play with this the last bet? So it is quite coordinated, but it's, again, such a small group, it doesn't feel like an overwhelming task. It's just a heck of a lot of fun.
We're running out of time.
The very fabric of reality will be torn apart.
I'll find a way to save us all.
It's a question for Natalie. I believe your mum keeps a scrapbook of photos that she allows out on set for such eventualities, and all these shots in the flat scene are you through the ages. Do you wish that scrapbook would go away, or as someone who can look at themselves on DVD age 10, are you sort of not worried about your old image?
Yeah, I guess the funny thing is that it is, I think, the same set of photos that she always lends out for every movie I've done for the past 20 years. So there's a lot of characters that shouldn't have the same experiences and family photos, but do. Hopefully they're, more background and people aren't really focusing on them. But yeah, all sorts of different people have been photoshopped into them, There's some interesting ones of me and Tobey Maguire from when I'm young, and but not real, of course, photoshopped. And, various different people I've worked with.
Thank you. The fifth row, please, with the gentleman with the glasses. Thank you.
Chris did actually touch on this a little bit earlier, but I'm interested because, people say conflict is drama. Malekith is the antagonist here, but we keep talking still about the brothers and the romantic dynamic. What's really the dynamic with Malekith, and what does it mean? What's the point of that storyline here, do you all think?
This Chris or that Chris?
You, Chris.
Oh, okay. What is the point of my story?
I mean that in the best possible way.
That's what I said to my agent. That's what I said to Kevin. The point of my storyline is for me to get paid. Point of my storyline, I'm repeating myself slightly, it's vengeance. He is a maniac for vengeance. There were some scenes which, for understandable reasons, didn't make the final cut, which explain a bit of a backstory between me, my ancestors, and Bor, who is Odin's father. But basically the Dark Elves, before the Big Bang, centuries and centuries ago, were humiliated in defeat and ground into the dirt by Odin. And Malekith has slept on that. And the theme of that element is vengeance, really. And as we know, as somebody said, let he who seeks vengeance be careful to dig two graves, because it's a pointless exercise. That's it. My job was to bring a dark element, the dark world. The dark elves are seeking to turn the light into darkness. It's really that simple. And that classic, if you like.
And we needed that in a movie where our villain from Avengers, we wanted to play in a slightly more ambiguous way. And in order to do that, we needed somebody who could drive the entire storyline and give Thor a reason to have something to fight against.
And we're all jumping in on this one. Malekith is a purist. He's a fundamentalist. He's a zealot one of the major themes in the movie for me is something that most of our characters have to confront in one way or another, and it was a theme that was expressed very clearly by Malekith in the scene that you will find on your Blu-ray, where he's confronting Odin, and he says, "You have to ask yourself, as I once did, what are you willing to sacrifice for what you believe?" And every character goes through a turning point like that in the movie, and Malekith is the kind of guy who would sacrifice anything for principle, and we've seen him do it. And Thor learns a difficult version of that and decides to go a different way.
Okay, time for the very last question. This lady in the front row, thank you.
I was wondering for Tom and Chris, Malekith is the main enemy in this, so Loki, although he's seen as the enemy, he's not the main antagonist. So I was wondering, deep down, do you think Loki is really evil, or is it just a jealous facade on the outside?
It's a question that I've asked myself 3 times. I think every villain is a hero in his own mind, and people make choices, and they always justify those choices, no matter how misguided their motivation. And the great privilege and thrill for me to play this character across 3 films is that he didn't start out that way, and the storyline, the narrative that was afforded to me in the very first film, this idea of a young prince who was brought up believing in his right to a throne, his inheritance of his Asgardian inheritance, that this whole story was a lie, that he was adopted and left to die on a frozen rock, and that essentially is what breaks his heart, and all of his villainy, all of his bad guy credentials come from something deeply vulnerable, and that's a gift, because it means across Thor, across Avengers, across the Dark World, that I can play a dynamic with Chris and with Anthony Hopkins and Rene Russo, which is, to what extent is he redeemable? Can he be pulled back towards the light? It's a very, very fun fault line to dance on.
Yeah, what Tom said. That's exactly it. Well done. How do you know so much about that?
I don't know. Seems like a good note on which to end. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks for your questions. And thanks most of all to Kevin Feige, Christopher Eccleston, Natalie Portman, Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, Kat Dennings, and Alan Taylor.